Millionaire sees exhausted girl cleaning his office. The reason breaks his heart. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The marble floors of Bennett Tower echoed with emptiness as Maxwell Bennett's Italian leather shoes clicked down the hallway. At 40, he commanded the city's real estate market with an iron fist. But the vastness of his corporate kingdom only emphasized what he lacked. "Cancel the charity dinner," Max barked into his phone, pausing by the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the glittering cityscape below. "Tell them I'll double my donation instead." The assistant on the other end stuttered an acknowledgement, used to these last-minute changes. Max ended the call without saying goodbye, sliding the phone into his tailored suit pocket. His reflection stared back at him from the window glass, distinguished silver streaks at his temples, a sharp jawline, and eyes that had forgotten how to smile. Archie, his golden retriever, padded up beside him, the only living being that Maxwell allowed close. The dog's warm presence was the single touch of companionship in his life. "Just you and me tonight, boy," Max murmured, his voice softening only for his faithful companion. He reached down to scratch behind Archie's ears, a rare gesture of affection that no human had witnessed in years. The penthouse sprawled around them, 10,000 square feet of premium real estate filled with expensive furniture, rare art, and absolutely no warmth. No family photos lined the walls. No children's laughter had ever filled these rooms. In the kitchen, Mrs. Rodriguez, his housekeeper of 12 years, was gathering her belongings to leave for the day. "Mr. Bennett, I've prepared your dinner in the refrigerator. Just heat it up when you're ready." Her voice was professional, hiding the pity she felt for her employer. Max nodded dismissively, but something on the counter caught his eye. A small, framed photograph Mrs. Rodriguez had accidentally left out of her purse. "Is this your family?" The question slipped out before he could stop himself. Mrs. Rodriguez brightened. "Yes, from my grandson's birthday last weekend. 5 grandchildren now," she said proudly. Something shifted in Max's expression. A flicker of emotion so brief that Mrs. Rodriguez almost missed it. Longing, perhaps regret. "You should put that away," he said, his tone returning to its usual coldness, "and lock up when you leave." As darkness fell, Max stared at a newspaper article, dubbing him the Wolf of Wall Street. Scowling, he made an impulsive decision. "Claire," he spoke into his phone, "arrange for me to attend the community shelter event tomorrow. It's time people saw another side of Maxwell Bennett." Maxwell Bennett tugged at his tie, already regretting his decision. The community shelter was crowded, noisy, and a far cry from his sterile corporate environment. His PR team hovered nearby, eagerly documenting his charitable moment for social media. "Just serve a few meals, shake some hands, and we'll have great publicity," Claire whispered, steering him toward the serving line. Max grimaced as he awkwardly ladled soup into bowls, maintaining a practiced smile that never reached his eyes. The homeless and struggling families murmured thanks, some recognizing the famous businessman despite his attempt to remain low-key. 15 more minutes, he muttered to Claire after an hour, checking his Rolex. "Then I'm leaving." As Max prepared to escape, Archie, who had accompanied him at Claire's suggestion, dogs make billionaires seem more relatable, suddenly tensed, ears perked forward. The golden retriever broke free from his leash and trotted purposefully toward the back. "Corner of the room, Archie, heel," Max commanded, but for the first time his loyal companion ignored him. Following reluctantly, Max found his dog sitting beside a small girl huddled alone at an empty table. No more than 6 years old, she wore clean but worn clothes and clutched a faded purple backpack. Despite her circumstances, she sat with unusual dignity for someone so young. "I'm sorry, sir," she said when she noticed Max approaching. "Your dog just came over, I didn't call him." "It's fine," Max replied, surprised by her formal tone. "He doesn't usually approach strangers." The girl scratched Archie behind his ears. "Dogs usually like me. What's his name?" "Archie." Max found himself sitting down across from her, an action that clearly surprised his hovering PR team. "I'm Sophia," she offered with surprising poise, extending a small hand. Max hesitated before shaking it. "Maxwell Bennett." Where are your parents, Sophia? He asked, noticing the dark circles under her eyes. Sophia's composure wavered slightly. My stepdad brought me here 4 days ago. He said he'd come back after visiting Mom in the hospital. She straightened her shoulders. He'll be back soon. 4 days. Something cold twisted in Max's chest. Has anyone here been helping you? He asked, looking around for shelter staff. They give me food, Sophia said simply. I'm being very good while I wait. As she spoke, her small hand remained buried in Archie's fur, and the dog looked up at Max with an expression that seemed almost accusatory. In that moment, looking at this child's brave face, something shifted in Maxwell Bennett, a hairline crack appearing in the walls he'd built around his heart. When did you last eat a proper meal, Sophia? He asked. Yesterday, I think, she replied, her matter-of-fact tone making it somehow worse. Max made a decision that would change everything. I think we need to find out what's happening with your mom. The grandeur of Bennett Tower seemed to shrink Sophia even further as they stepped through the imposing front door. Her eyes widened, taking in the marble foyer and sweeping staircase. Mrs. Rodriguez! Max called out, realizing too late that his housekeeper had already left for the evening. He rarely returned home with guests, let alone children. She's gone. Home, hasn't she? Sophia asked perceptively. That's okay. I can sleep on the couch. Max cleared his throat awkwardly. No, that won't be necessary. I have plenty of guest rooms. He led her upstairs, Archie following closely behind them. Selecting the smallest guest bedroom, which was still larger than most master suites, Max flipped on the light. Will this be all right? He asked, suddenly aware of how impersonal the room was. Expensive, yes, with its king-sized bed and designer furnishings, but sterile and uninviting. Sophia nodded, clutching her worn backpack. It's very nice, thank you, Mr. Bennett. Max, he corrected automatically, then wondered why he'd done so. He never invited such familiarity, not even from long-term employees. You must be hungry, he realized, recalling her admission about not eating since yesterday. In the kitchen, Max stared blankly at his refrigerator. Mrs. Rodriguez had left his prepared dinner, but nothing suitable for a child. He awkwardly reheated some pasta and placed it before Sophia, who sat at the massive dining table looking like a doll in a giant's house. Thank you, Max, she said politely, taking small, careful bites as if savoring every morsel. The silence felt oppressive. Max had no idea how to talk to a child. So, what grade are you in? He attempted. First, Sophia answered between bites. I like math best. Math, Max echoed, remembering his own childhood affinity for numbers. That's good. Practical. Another silence fell. Your house is very big for just one person, Sophia observed. Max shifted uncomfortably. I like my space. Don't you get lonely? The direct question caught him off guard. I have Archie, he replied defensively. Sophia nodded thoughtfully. Archie is nice, but dogs can't talk back. After dinner, Max awkwardly showed her to the bathroom, finding a new toothbrush in a drawer and explaining how to adjust the shower temperature. Later, as Max sat in his study with a glass of scotch, he noticed a small notebook that had fallen from Sophia's backpack. Picking it up, he found pages filled with colorful drawings. One showed a woman with Sophia's delicate features labeled, Mom, the strongest person in the world. As he passed her room on the way to his own bedroom, he heard muffled crying. Max paused, his hand raised to knock, then lowered it, paralyzed by his own emotional inadequacy. Instead, he slid down against the wall outside her door, sitting on the floor in his expensive suit, listening helplessly as the little girl cried herself to sleep. Morning light streamed through the windows, finding Max sitting at his kitchen island, phone in hand, hair uncombed, a state in which his business associates would never have recognized him. Olivia, I need your help, he said quietly into the phone. It's about a child whose mother is hospitalized. I need to find out everything. The mother's condition, family situation, why the stepfather abandoned her. Olivia Santos, a private investigator Max occasionally hired to vet business partners, was professional as always. "Send me what you have, I'll start immediately." As he ended the call, Max heard small footsteps. Sophia appeared in the doorway, Archie at her side as if he'd appointed himself her personal guardian. "Good morning," she said softly. Before Max could respond, Mrs. Rodriguez arrived, stopping short at the unexpected scene. Her surprised expression quickly melted into efficient professionalism as she took in the situation. "Good morning, young lady. Would you like some pancakes?" While Sophia ate breakfast, Max made another call to his office. "Claire, clear my schedule. Until noon. Family emergency." Claire's stunned silence spoke volumes. In 15 years, Maxwell Bennett had never missed work for personal reasons. An hour later, showered and properly dressed, Max awkwardly explained to Sophia that he needed to go to the office. "Mrs. Rodriguez will stay with you. I've called someone to help find your mom." Sophia nodded solemnly. "When will you be back?" The question caught him off guard. I'll be back for lunch," he found himself promising. At Bennett Enterprises, Max struggled to focus on the Anderson development deal. His thoughts kept drifting to the small girl in his penthouse. "Sir, these safety regulation modifications will cut into our profit margin by at least," his project manager was saying. "Implement them anyway," Max interrupted, surprising everyone in the boardroom. True to his word, Max returned home at noon, finding Sophia at the kitchen table surrounded by papers. "What's all this?" he asked. "Mrs. Rodriguez called my school and they sent over what I've missed," Sophia explained, carefully writing numbers in a workbook. Something warm and unfamiliar expanded in Max's chest as he watched her concentrated efforts. His phone buzzed. "Olivia. I found her," she said without preamble. "Rebecca Collins. She's in intensive care at Memorial Hospital following a construction accident. Comatose since admission 5 days ago." "And the stepfather?" "Carter Williams. Multiple priors for fraud and petty theft, never legally married Collins. I want a complete background on both of them," Max instructed. That evening, after Sophia was asleep, Max examined the contents of her backpack more thoroughly, searching for information that might help Olivia. Among school papers and carefully folded clothes, he found a worn photograph. A young woman with Sophia's eyes smiled at the camera, her arm around a younger, laughing man at a beach. Max froze, the photograph slipping from suddenly numb fingers. The young man was himself, 15 years ago. Memorial Hospital's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows as Max followed a nurse down the sterile corridor. His mind raced with questions, but one thought dominated. Why did that beach photo feel so familiar? "She's been unresponsive since admission," the nurse explained, stopping outside room 412. "The doctors are monitoring for brain activity, but..." Max barely heard her. As he stepped into the room, time seemed to freeze. The woman lying motionless amid medical equipment was gaunt and pale, but unmistakable. Rebecca Collins, once Rebecca Summers, was the same woman he'd loved with reckless abandon during college. Their summer romance had been intense and all-consuming before his stepmother Victoria convinced him to pursue his business dreams in New York, leaving Rebecca behind in California. "Rebecca," he whispered, approaching the bed with unsteady steps. 15 years melted away. He remembered her laugh, the way she'd drag him from his economics textbooks to watch the sunset, her dreams of becoming an architect. They had planned a future together, until ambition and family expectations pulled him away. His phone vibrated. "Olivia." "The accident report just came through," she said when he stepped into the hallway. She was working as a cleaner at a construction site when a poorly secured scaffold collapsed. "Where?" Max asked, though he already suspected the answer. "The West Side Heights development." Olivia paused. "It's your project, Max." The irony was almost too much to bear. Rebecca had been injured at his building site, while their daughter, he was now certain Sophia was his, waited faithfully for a return that wouldn't come. "There's more," Olivia continued. "I pulled Collins's history. She legally changed her name from Summers about 6 years ago, right after Sophia was born. The birth certificate lists father as unknown, but the timing matches when we were together. Max finished, his voice hollow. Back in his car, Max rested his forehead against the steering wheel, overwhelmed by the implications. If Sophia was born 6 years ago, she would have been conceived just before he left for New York. Had Rebecca known she was pregnant when he left? With shaking hands, he called the only person who might have answers. "Victoria," he said when his stepmother answered. "Did Rebecca Summers ever try to contact me after I moved to New York?" The extended silence told him everything. "It was for your own good, Maxwell," Victoria finally replied, her voice cold. "That girl would have ruined everything we built. Your father left the company to you, not some beach romance and her bastard child." "You knew," Max whispered, rage building. "You knew I had a daughter and you kept it from me." "I intercepted her letters. She was obviously after your money." Max ended the call, unable to bear another word. Outside the hospital window, rain began to fall, mirroring the storm within him. 15 years of choices crashed down on him. He had chosen ambition over love, wealth over connection, power over family. And while he'd built his empire, Rebecca had raised their daughter alone. Their daughter. The reality struck him anew. He had a child, a daughter he'd never known existed. Victoria Bennett's pristine Upper East Side apartment reflected her calculated personality. Every object precisely placed, every surface spotless. Max stood by the window, staring at the woman who had been his stepmother for 30 years. "Where are they?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Victoria sat perfectly poised on her white sofa. "I don't know what you're—" "The letters, Victoria. Rebecca's letters." A flicker of unease crossed Victoria's face. "It was 15 years ago, Maxwell. I hardly kept—" "Don't lie to me." The rare explosion of emotion startled them both. "You kept everything. You're too meticulous not to." Victoria's mask slipped momentarily before she rose with a sigh. From her study she returned with a small box. "You were destined for greatness," she said, handing it to him. "That girl would have held you back." Inside, Max found a dozen unopened envelopes in Rebecca's handwriting, the earliest postmarked 15 years ago. The final one, dated 6 years ago, was heavier than the rest. "You had no right," he whispered. "I protected your future," Victoria replied coldly. "You stole my life," Max countered, clutching the box as he walked out. Back at the hospital, Max sat beside Rebecca's bed, the letters spread before him. He'd read each one. Her initial confusion at his silence, her discovery of the pregnancy, her attempts to find him as years passed. The final envelope had contained Sophia's birth photo and tiny handprint. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, taking Rebecca's limp hand. "I never knew. I would have come back. I would have—" His voice broke. The machines beeped steadily, monitoring the woman who had raised their child alone while he accumulated wealth and power, oblivious to what truly mattered. "I'll make this right," he promised, tears finally breaking through his carefully constructed walls. "I'll take care of Sophia. I'll fix the systems that hurt you. I'll be the father she deserves and the man I should have been." As he wiped his eyes, a shadow darkened the doorway. "Well, isn't this touching?" drawled a voice. Max turned to see a disheveled man leaning against the doorframe, bloodshot eyes calculating. "Carter Williams," Max stated, immediately recognizing the description from Olivia's report, in the flesh. Carter smirked. "Come to check on your investment? Heard your company's paying her medical bills." Max stood, positioning himself between Carter and Rebecca's bed. "You abandoned a 6-year-old child at a shelter." Carter shrugged. "Temporary situation. I'm here to collect Sophia now." "Where is she?" "Safe," Max replied, his voice hardening. "And staying that way." Carter's friendly facade dropped. "Listen, rich boy, that kid is my meal ticket. Rebecca's accident settlement from your company will set me up nicely. So either you tell me where Sophia is, or I'll make things very public and very ugly." Max stepped closer, his voice low. "You'll never go near Sophia again. And if you try, I'll make sure those outstanding warrants catch up with you." After security escorted Carter out, Max returned to Rebecca's side, his resolve strengthened by the confrontation. "I promise," he whispered to her. "No one will hurt either of you again." "The court grants temporary custody to Mr. Bennett, pending Ms. Collins's recovery," the judge announced, bringing the emergency hearing to a close. Max nodded solemnly, aware of Sophia watching him with those perceptive eyes that reminded him so much of Rebecca. The child still didn't know the truth about their relationship. He couldn't bear to tell her while her mother lay unconscious, unable to participate in such a pivotal conversation. Later that evening, while Sophia was absorbed in a cartoon Mrs. Rodriguez had found on television, Max retreated to his home office. Spread across his desk were the safety inspection reports from the West Side Heights project, where Rebecca had been injured. "Construction deadlines accelerated by 6 weeks," he read. "Safety protocols minimized to reduce costs." His stomach churned as he recognized his own signature on the directive. The mandate to cut costs had come directly from him, part of his ruthless efficiency that had built Bennett Enterprises into a real estate empire. Max had created the very system that had nearly killed Rebecca and orphaned their daughter. He pushed away from his desk, disgusted with himself, and wandered down the hall. Passing the guest room where Sophia slept, he paused. The stark, impersonal space suddenly seemed entirely inadequate. Making a decision, Max entered his rarely used storage room and began emptying it of exercise equipment and forgotten business files. By midnight, he had cleared the space completely. The next morning, Sophia found him surrounded by paint swatches and furniture catalogs. "What are you doing?" she asked, Archie at her heels. "This room has better light," Max explained awkwardly. "I thought you might prefer it over the guest room." Sophia studied the space thoughtfully. "Can it be blue? Mom always said we'd have a blue room someday." "Of course," Max replied, his throat tightening. "Any specific shade?" "Sky blue," Sophia cited. "Like the ceiling at the beach house in my book." That afternoon, Max surprised his executive team by arriving at the weekly meeting in paint-spattered clothes, having lost track of time while transforming Sophia's room. "Before we begin," he announced, "I want a complete review of all our construction site safety protocols." "But sir," his COO protested, "our current standards meet legal requirements while maximizing profit." "Our current standards put a woman in a coma," Max interrupted coldly. "My new directive is this. Every Bennett Enterprises project will exceed safety requirements by 200%, effective immediately." That evening, while Sophia slept, Max carefully painted glow-in-the-dark stars on her new ceiling, remembering how Rebecca had loved stargazing. When he finished, he stood back, surveying his handiwork with unexpected emotion. Next to Sophia's bed, he placed the framed beach photo of himself and Rebecca, polished and restored. She deserved to have her mother watching over her, even if just in a photograph. As he turned to leave, Max noticed Sophia's worn notebook open to a new drawing. 3 stick figures, one tall, one small, and one lying down, all holding hands in front of what looked like his building. Family was written across the top in careful first-grade handwriting. Max Bennett, who hadn't cried since childhood, felt tears sliding down his cheeks for the second time in a week. "Hold still," Max instructed, his fingers fumbling with Sophia's hair. "This looked easier in the YouTube tutorial," Sophia giggled as he attempted his 3rd French braid of the morning. 2 weeks had passed since the custody hearing, and their morning routine had evolved into something almost natural. "Mom does it from the top," she offered helpfully, holding up her small pink mirror. "Right," Max muttered, starting over. When he finally succeeded, Sophia beamed at her reflection. "Not bad for a beginner," she declared with 6-year-old magnanimity. Their daily hospital visits had become sacred rituals. Today, Max balanced his laptop on his knees in Rebecca's room, responding to emails while Sophia carefully arranged fresh drawings on her mother's bedside table. "Mom's favorite flowers are sunflowers," Sophia informed him, placing a yellow crayon creation prominently. Max glanced up, I remember, he said softly. She always said they reminded her to look toward the light. Sophia's eyes widened. You really did know her before. The innocent comment sent a pang through Max's chest. They still hadn't told her the truth, though. The temporary custody arrangement was public knowledge. Your mother was very special, Max said carefully. She taught me a lot about seeing beauty in simple things. Dr. Levine entered, reviewing Rebecca's charts. We're seeing increased brain activity during your visits, she noted, particularly when you both speak to her. Is that good? Sophia asked eagerly. Very good, the doctor confirmed. Keep talking to her. She may hear more than we realize. That night, Max tucked Sophia into her star-ceilinged room, now fully transformed with sky-blue walls, bookshelves, and a window seat perfect for reading. Max? Sophia asked drowsily. Can I bring Archie to school tomorrow for show and tell? I want to show everyone my dog. My dog. The simple phrase caught Max off guard. Somehow, in just 2 weeks, they had become a unit. The man, the child, and the golden retriever who now slept faithfully at the foot of Sophia's bed rather than his own. Of course, he found himself agreeing. I'll speak with your teacher. The next day, Max shocked his executive assistant by blocking his calendar for show and tell, priority meeting. Walking into Sophia's classroom with Archie on a leash, he felt strangely nervous under the curious gazes of first graders and their teacher. This is my dog Archie, Sophia announced proudly to her classmates. And this is Max. He's taking care of me while my mom gets better. She hesitated, then added, He's really my dad, but we're still getting to know each other. Max froze, stunned by her intuitive leap to the truth he hadn't yet confirmed. The teacher's eyes widened slightly, but she maintained her professional composure. Later in the car, Max gently asked, Sophia, why did you call me your dad at school? She looked up from petting Archie. Because you are, aren't you? You have the same crinkles by your eyes when you smile, and you keep the same picture of you and Mom that she keeps in her special box. Out of the mouths of babes, Max thought, his heart racing. Yes, he admitted finally. I am your father, Sophia. I know, she said simply. I've been waiting for you to tell me. Maxwell Bennett discovers secret daughter, business titan's love child, and comatose ex-girlfriend. The ow. Headline screamed from every newspaper in the city. Max stared at his phone as notifications flooded in. Calls from board members, texts from Claire about damage control, even a surprisingly warm message from his college roommate congratulating him on fatherhood. How did they find out? He asked. Olivia, who had arrived at his penthouse within minutes of the story breaking. Paparazzi at the hospital, she explained, showing him the grainy photo of him and Sophia leaving Memorial together. Someone connected the dots. The custody hearing was public record. Max's immediate concern wasn't his reputation, but Sophia, who was due home from school any minute. I need to protect her from this circus, he said, already seeing the photographers gathering outside his building. When Mrs. Rodriguez brought Sophia up through the private garage entrance, the child's face was confusion itself. My teacher showed me the newspaper, she said, climbing onto a bar stool. It says you're my dad, which I knew, but it also says lots of other stuff about Mom. Some kids were whispering about it. Max knelt beside her. People are going to say, a lot of things, Sophia. Some of it's true, some isn't. What matters is what we know. Are you ashamed of me? She asked suddenly, her voice small. What? No! Max was genuinely shocked. Why would you think that? The newspaper said I was your secret daughter. Secrets are things people are ashamed of. Max felt something crack inside him. Taking her, small hands in his, he spoke with more emotion than he'd shown anyone in decades. I am not ashamed of you, Sophia. I didn't know about you until 2 weeks ago, or I would have been in your life from the very beginning. You are the best thing that's ever happened to me. An hour later, Max stood before a forest of microphones in the Bennett Tower lobby, Sophia's, hand firmly in his. Yes, I recently discovered that Sophia is my daughter, he stated, his voice steady. Her mother, Rebecca Collins, and I were in a relationship 15 years ago. Due to circumstances beyond Rebecca's control, I was unaware. I had a daughter until recently. A reporter shouted, "Is it true the mother was injured at your construction site? Are you only acknowledging the child to avoid a lawsuit?" Max felt Sophia tense beside him. Instead of the corporate deflection everyone expected, Max knelt to Sophia's level. "Would it be okay if I tell them about the stars on your ceiling?" he asked. Sophia nodded, confused but trusting. Standing again, Max faced the reporters. "My daughter likes stars on her ceiling and sunflowers in her room. She excels at math and has my eyes. These are the things that matter to me now, not speculation about legal liabilities. Bennett Enterprises will address our safety protocols separately," he continued firmly. "But today I'm speaking as a father who is getting to know his amazing daughter, and whose only focus is her well-being and her mother's recovery." As they left, Sophia squeezed his hand. "That was good, Dad," she whispered, using the title for the first time. "There's been a change," Dr. Levine's voice crackled through Max's phone at 2 a.m. "You should come to the hospital right away." 20 minutes later, Max raced down the hospital corridor, having left Sophia with Mrs. Rodriguez. His heart pounded. With a mixture of hope and fear, Dr. Wagner, the neurology specialist he'd flown in from Switzerland at considerable expense, met him outside Rebecca's room. "We're seeing significant improvement in brain activity," she explained. "The new treatment protocol is working better than expected. She's showing signs of emerging consciousness." Max entered the room, his breath catching at the sight of monitors, displaying active readings where they had been nearly flat before. "How long until—" He couldn't finish the question. "It could be hours or days," Dr. Wagner cautioned. "But the signs are promising." Max spent the night in the uncomfortable hospital chair, Rebecca's hand in his. He read aloud from her favorite poet, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, remembering how she'd recited, "How do I love thee," during their midnight beach walks. As dawn broke, he felt it, the slightest pressure against his fingers. Looking down, he saw Rebecca's hand twitching in his. "Rebecca," he whispered. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. 3 days later, during Sophia's after-school visit, it finally happened. As Sophia chattered about her science project, Rebecca's eyes opened, confused at first, then focusing with dawning recognition on her daughter. "Sophia?" Her voice was barely audible, raspy from disuse. "Mom." Sophia's shriek of joy brought nurses running as she threw herself carefully against her mother's side. Rebecca weakly embraced her daughter, tears streaming down her face. "My baby, I'm so sorry I left you waiting." "It's okay," Sophia assured her. "Dad found me." Rebecca's eyes widened, shifting past Sophia to where Max stood frozen by the door, their gazes locked. 15 years of separation, pain and unanswered questions passing between them in a single electric moment. Later, after doctors had examined Rebecca, and Sophia had been persuaded to get dinner in the cafeteria with Mrs. Rodriguez, they were finally alone. "How?" Rebecca asked, her voice stronger but still rough. "How did you find her?" "Pure chance," Max admitted, taking the chair beside her bed. "I was at a community shelter for a PR event. She was waiting for Carter to return." Rebecca closed her eyes briefly. "He was supposed to take her to my friend Julia's house. I never would have trusted him otherwise." "I know," Max said gently. "Olivia, my investigator, found Julia. She'd been out of town and had no idea what happened. Rebecca studied him, taking in the changes 15 years had wrought." "Sophia called you Dad," she said finally. Max nodded. "I found the photo in her backpack. Then Olivia uncovered your name change, the timing of everything." He hesitated. "Why didn't you tell me, Rebecca?" Her eyes flashed with momentary anger. "I tried, Max. I called your office for months. I wrote letters, dozens of them." Max opened his briefcase and carefully removed the box of unopened letters. "I never received them," he said quietly, placing them on her bed. "Victoria intercepted them all." Rebecca stared at the unopened envelopes, tangible evidence of her desperate attempts to reach him, preserved exactly as she'd sent them. "You really didn't know?" she whispered, realization dawning. "Not until 2 weeks ago," Max confirmed, voice breaking. "I would never have left if I'd known, Rebecca. Never." Rebecca's tears fell freely now. 15 years, she murmured. "All that time?" Max gently took her hand. "I can't get those years back for any of us, but I promise you I'm trying to make it right now." Rebecca glanced toward the door, where Sophia's shadow was visible through the frosted glass. "We need to explain everything to her properly," she said. Together. 2 weeks after awakening, Rebecca stood shakily in Max's penthouse, leaning on a walker as she surveyed the opulent space with undisguised discomfort. "This is excessive," she murmured, taking in the panoramic city views and minimalist luxury that defined Maxwell Bennett's kingdom. "The guest suite is this way." Max guided her gently. "I've had it modified with all the equipment the physical therapist recommended." Rebecca had insisted on leaving the hospital as soon as medically possible, but her body remained weak from weeks in a coma. The doctors had prescribed intensive physical therapy and rest, neither of which she could manage in her small apartment that had been surrendered during her hospitalization. "I can find my own place," she'd insisted when Max first suggested she recover at his penthouse. "Don't be ridiculous," he'd countered. "You can barely walk. Sophia is already settled here. It makes perfect sense." Now, watching Rebecca's tense expression as she took in the custom hospital bed and state-of-the-art recovery equipment he'd installed, Max realized he'd made a critical error. He had tried to solve the problem with money, his default approach to everything. "I don't need charity, Max," Rebecca said quietly that evening after Sophia was asleep. "It's not charity," he replied, frustrated. "You're Sophia's mother, my daughter's mother. For 6 years I managed on my own," Rebecca countered, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. 3 jobs sometimes. I never missed a rent payment. I made sure Sophia had everything she needed." "I know," Max said softly. "You did an incredible job with her. And now I'm supposed to just, what, live in your guest suite? Let you pay for everything? Become dependent on you after all these years of independence?" The question hung between them, laden with painful history and pride. "What's the alternative?" Max asked, attempting to keep his businessman's rationality. "You need time to recover. Sophia needs stability." "I need my identity back," Rebecca insisted. "I've spent 15 years being defined by what happened between us. I can't just become an extension of your wealth now." Their argument was interrupted by a small voice from the doorway. "You're fighting about me, aren't you?" Both adults turned to find Sophia in her star-patterned pajamas, Archie loyally at her side. "No, sweetheart," Rebecca began, but Sophia shook her head. "You're fighting about where we're going to live and what's going to happen," she stated with that uncanny perception that continually surprised them. "I heard you," Max sighed. "We're trying to figure things out, Sophia. Grown-up things." "I made something that might help," Sophia said, approaching with a folded paper clutched in her hand. "Miss Peterson taught us about contracts and social studies." She unfolded the paper on the coffee table between them. In careful handwriting and colorful markers was a document titled, "Our Family Agreement." Both adults leaned forward, reading with growing astonishment. "Mom gets her own space and can work when she feels better. Dad doesn't use money to fix everything. We all eat dinner together. Mom and Dad talk about big decisions together. Sophia gets to have both parents and doesn't have to choose." At the bottom were 3 signature lines, one signed Sophia Harper Bennett in purple marker, and 2 blank lines labeled Mom and Dad. "You've been thinking about this a lot, haven't you?" Rebecca asked softly. Sophia nodded solemnly. "I don't want anyone to leave again," she whispered. "Can't we just be a family, even if it's complicated?" Max and Rebecca exchanged a glance over their daughter's head, a moment of perfect understanding, amid their differences. "You're right, Sophia," Max said, his voice rough with emotion. "We're making this more complicated than it needs to be." Taking the marker Sophia offered, he signed the makeshift contract. Rebecca followed, adding her signature with a trembling hand. "It's official now," Sophia declared. "We're going to figure it out together." "What do you think?" Max asked, stepping back as Rebecca explored the renovated guest house behind the main penthouse. Once a rarely used entertainment space, the 200-square-foot structure had been transformed in just 2 weeks. An airy living room flowed into an open kitchen, while 2 bedrooms featured large windows overlooking the terrace garden. Everything was accessible, with subtle modifications for Rebecca's ongoing recovery. "It's perfect," Rebecca admitted, running her fingers along the blue kitchen cabinets, the exact shade she'd always loved. "You remembered. Some things you don't forget," Max replied quietly. True to Sophia's contract, the guest house provided Rebecca the independence she craved while keeping their family connected. Each morning, Sophia bounded between both spaces, bringing Max coffee from Mom's kitchen and reporting back to Rebecca about Dad's important calls. The arrangement had unexpected effects on Max. For the first time in decades, he delegated significant responsibilities at Bennett Enterprises, leaving the office by 4 p.m. most days. "The quarterly projections can wait until tomorrow," he informed, a shocked Claire one afternoon. "Sophia has a science fair tonight at the elementary school gymnasium." Max and Rebecca sat side by side watching Sophia proudly present her solar system model. "Remember when we talked about seeing the northern lights someday?" Rebecca whispered. Max nodded, acutely aware of their shoulders nearly touching. "Alaska, you had the whole trip planned out." "I still have the brochures," she admitted with a small smile. These moments, fragile bridges across the 15-year chasm between them, appeared with increasing frequency. A shared glance when Sophia said something precocious. The accidental brush of hands while doing dishes after family dinners. Late evening conversations on the terrace after Sophia was asleep. 3 months after Rebecca's awakening, Max approached her with a proposal. "I've established a foundation," he explained, spreading architectural renderings across her kitchen table, focusing on affordable housing, medical support for families in crisis, childcare for working parents, basically addressing every obstacle you faced raising Sophia alone. Rebecca studied the plans, her professional architect's eye recognizing quality design. "This is impressive, Max, but why show me?" "Because I'd like you to run it," he said simply. "You understand the needs better than anyone. It would be your foundation as much as mine." Rebecca's eyes widened. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a purpose," Max clarified, "with complete autonomy, your expertise, my resources." 2 days later, the Bennett Collins Family Foundation had its first director. Rebecca flourished in the role, her first-hand experience informing every decision. She hired staff who had faced similar challenges, creating programs that addressed real-world needs rather than theoretical problems. Meanwhile, Max faced his own transformation. The ruthless businessman who once prioritized profit margins now personally reviewed safety protocols at every construction site. He established scholarship programs for employees' children and doubled the minimum wage across all his properties. "You've gone soft, Bennett," remarked Jonathan Pierce, his oldest competitor, during a charity gala. "I've gained perspective," Max corrected, watching Rebecca and Sophia across the room, heads bent together over the dessert table. The most profound changes happened in quiet moments, Max learning to make Rebecca's favorite tea exactly as she liked it. Rebecca discovering that Max still played piano when stressed, just as he had in college. Both of them creating new traditions with Sophia: Sunday morning pancakes, Thursday movie nights, weekend exploration of city parks with Archie bounding ahead. One evening, as Sophia fell asleep between them during a movie, Rebecca gently touched Max's hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For giving us time," she said simply. "For not rushing this strange new life we're building." Max turned, his palm upward, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Some things," he replied, "are worth waiting for." "You can't be serious, Max." Harold Winters, Bennett Enterprises' CFO for 20 years, stared at the proposal before him. "These changes will cut our profit margins by nearly 30%, Max." leaned forward unfazed by the boardroom tension. I'm entirely serious, Harold. Every Bennett Enterprises project will implement these new safety protocols, living wage standards, and community investment requirements, effective immediately. The shareholders will revolt, warned Diane Price from legal. Then let them, Max replied calmly. I still hold controlling interest. 6 months after finding Sophia, Maxwell Bennett was nearly unrecognizable to those who had known him before. The transformation that began in his personal life had extended to every aspect of his business empire. That afternoon, Max personally addressed the construction crews at Westside Heights, the very site where Rebecca had been injured. Today we're breaking ground again, he announced to the assembled workers. Not just on a redesigned building, but on a new way of doing business. Workers exchanged skeptical glances as Max continued. Every person on this site will receive comprehensive health insurance, regardless of whether you're full-time, part-time, or contracted. The minimum wage here is now double the city requirement. And for every luxury unit we build, we're adding an affordable housing unit for families in need. A murmur ran through the crowd. I built my fortune by prioritizing profits over people, Max admitted. It took nearly losing someone irreplaceable to make me see how wrong I was. Back at his office, Max faced the fallout. Several board members threatened resignation. The stock dipped temporarily. Business publications ran headlines questioning his judgment. You knew this would happen, Rebecca observed that evening, finding him on the terrace with a rare glass of scotch. Having second thoughts? Max shook his head. For the first time, I'm certain I'm doing the right thing. Rebecca sat beside him, her recovery now complete enough that she moved without assistance. Sophia's teacher called today. She wants to interview you for career day. Max raised an eyebrow. Me? Apparently, Sophia has been telling everyone how her dad builds houses for people who need them. Rebecca smiled. You've made quite an impression. 2 weeks later, Max stood nervously before 21st graders, explaining in simple terms how buildings were constructed. My old job was making money, he told them honestly. My new job is making sure people have safe places to live and work. Like what you did for my mom? Sophia asked proudly from the front row. Exactly like that, Max replied, his voice softening. The transformation extended beyond policy changes. Max sold his sleek sports cars and now drove a sensible SUV with Sophia's booster seat installed. His notorious 16-hour workdays shortened to make room for school pickups and family dinners. Even his wardrobe relaxed. Expensive suits reserved for meetings replaced by casual clothes for playground outings. The most public display came during a televised city council meeting on housing regulations. When his turn to speak arrived, Max approached the microphone with Rebecca and Sophia beside him. A year ago, I would have argued against these regulations, he began candidly. I would have cited costs, bureaucracy, and market freedom. He glanced at Rebecca, drawing strength from her presence. Today, I'm here to support the strongest possible safety and affordability measures. Because I've learned, personally and painfully, what happens when we prioritize profit over people. The council chambers fell silent as Max continued. My daughter's mother nearly died because of corner cutting I approved. That's a weight I'll carry forever. But it's also a lesson I can share. We can build successful businesses while still ensuring everyone has a safe place to call home. As they left City Hall, a reporter called out, Is this the end of the old Maxwell Bennett? Max looked down at Sophia, her small hand trusting in his, then at Rebecca, her eyes reflecting a future he once thought impossible. It's not an end, he answered. It's a beginning. The abandoned warehouse in Queens felt like stepping into a nightmare. Madison's heart pounded as he followed the FBI tactical team through the maze of shipping containers and rusted machinery. Sarah stayed close behind him, both of them wearing bulletproof vests that felt surreal against the morning sun. We have visual confirmation, Agent Martinez whispered into his radio. 2 adults, 1 elderly female, 1 child. They appear unharmed but restrained. Through a grimy window, Madison saw them. Rose tied to a chair with duct tape over her mouth, her eyes wide with fear. Emma sat beside her, also bound but defiant. her small chin raised in the same stubborn way Madison remembered from their first meeting. "That's my family," Madison whispered, surprised by the fierce protectiveness that surged through him. Victoria's voice echoed from inside the warehouse, shrill with desperation. "I know you're out there, Madison. Come in alone or they get hurt." Agent Martinez shook his head firmly. "Mr. Cooper, you cannot." "She's talking to a 7-year-old child," Madison interrupted, already removing his vest. "I'm going in." Madison walked through the warehouse's main entrance, hands visible and empty. He found Victoria pacing frantically, near Rose and Emma, a gun trembling in her manicured hands. Nathan stood behind her, his face pale with the realization of how far they'd fallen. "You destroyed everything," Victoria screamed at Madison. "My life, my future, all for some cleaning lady and her brat." "Her name is Rose," Madison said calmly, never taking his eyes off Emma, who was watching him with absolute trust. "And that brat is my daughter." "Your daughter?" Victoria laughed hysterically. "You've known her for a month." "Family isn't about time, Victoria. It's about love. Something you never understood." Madison took a step closer. "Let them go. Your fight is with me. Stop!" Victoria swung the gun toward him. "You don't get to be the hero here. You chose them over me, over us, over everything we built together." "I chose love over greed," Madison replied. "I chose protecting innocence over protecting profit. I chose being a father over being alone." Emma's muffled voice came through her gag, trying to say something. Madison's heart broke seeing her struggle. "What is it, sweetheart?" Madison asked gently. Emma worked her mouth until the tape loosened slightly. "Don't let the mean lady hurt Grandma. Rose," she whispered. The simple, brave words shattered something in Victoria's composure. For a moment, the gun wavered as she stared at the child she'd terrorized. "She's just a baby," Nathan said suddenly, his voice cracking. "Victoria, what are we doing? This isn't who we are." "Yes, it is," Victoria shrieked. "This is exactly who we are. We take what we want and destroy anyone who gets in our way." The FBI team burst through the windows simultaneously, their movements swift and precise. Victoria spun toward the noise and Madison lunged forward, placing himself between the gun and his family. The shot rang out, echoing through the warehouse, like thunder. Madison felt the bullet tear through his shoulder, spinning him around, but he kept moving until he reached Emma and Rose. With shaking hands, he untied Emma first, pulling her against his chest with his good arm. "Daddy Madison," Emma sobbed into his shirt. "I knew you'd come. I knew you'd save us." As FBI agents subdued Victoria and Nathan, Madison freed Rose, who immediately began fussing over his wounded shoulder with tears streaming down her face. "My dear boy," she whispered. "You could have been killed." Madison looked at Emma, still clinging to him, then at Rose's beloved face. "Not possible," he said softly. "I had too much to live for." 3 days later, Madison sat in his hospital bed, his arm in a sling, watching Emma color in a Disney princess book while Rose fussed with the flower arrangements that had arrived from well-wishers. The bullet had passed cleanly through his shoulder, but the doctors insisted on monitoring him for infection. The preliminary hearing was this morning, Sarah reported, entering with a thick file. Victoria and Nathan are facing federal kidnapping, charges, embezzlement, fraud, and attempted murder. Nathan's already agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. Madison adjusted his position carefully, wincing. "What did he tell them?" "Everything," Sarah said grimly. "The Meridian deal was fake, just a front to justify removing you. Victoria owed $2 million to loan sharks from her gambling addiction. They needed the pension fund money immediately to keep her alive." Emma looked up from her coloring. "Are the mean people going to jail forever?" "For a very long time, sweetheart," Madison assured her. Rose set down a vase of lilies, her face thoughtful. "I keep thinking about Victoria as a young woman when you two were married. She wasn't always like this." "Desperation changes people," Madison replied. "But it doesn't excuse what she did to you and Emma." Sarah flipped through her notes. "The FBI found evidence of a much larger conspiracy, Victoria had been planning this for over a year, documenting your every move, building a psychological profile to use against you. Meeting Rose and Emma just gave her the perfect ammunition. So all those coincidences, Madison began, weren't coincidences at all, Sarah finished. She had people watching your building. They knew Rose worked there, knew about her connection to your mother. When you brought them home, Victoria saw an opportunity to paint you as mentally unstable. Agent Martinez appeared in the doorway. Mr. Cooper, we need your statement about the warehouse incident. As Madison recounted the terrifying events, Emma climbed carefully onto his hospital bed, curling against his uninjured side. Daddy Madison was so brave, she told the agent solemnly. He saved us from the bad people. The word daddy still sent warmth through Madison's chest every time she said it. After the agent left, Rose pulled her chair closer to the bed. Madison, there's something I need to tell you about why I really took the job at Cooper Industries all those years ago. Madison felt a familiar tingle of anticipation. What do you mean? Your mother, before she died, she made me promise something. Rose's eyes filled with tears. She said if anything ever happened to her, I should watch over you from a distance. She was worried about your father's coldness, about you growing up without love. Madison stared at her. You've been protecting me for 43 years? I tried, Rose whispered. But I failed when you married Victoria. I could see she was wrong for you, but I was just the cleaning lady. Who would listen to me? Emma looked up from her coloring book. Grandma Rose, you didn't fail. You brought us to Daddy Madison when he needed us most. The simple wisdom of a 7-year-old filled the room with truth. Madison reached for Rose's hand with his good arm. Mom would be so proud of you, he said, quietly, and so grateful that you kept your promise. Outside the hospital window, New York City hummed with life, but inside this room, 3 people who had found each other against impossible odds held on to what mattered most: family, forgiveness, and the courage to start over. 2 months later, the Cooper Industries boardroom bore little resemblance to the site of corporate warfare that had nearly destroyed Madison's life. Sunlight streamed through windows that had been cleaned by Rose Patterson herself, not as an employee, but as the newly appointed Director of Employee Wellness, a position Madison had created specifically for her unique talents. The pension fund has been fully restored, Sarah announced to the assembled board members, most of whom were new faces after the scandal had forced several resignations. Nathan's assets covered most of the shortfall, and Madison personally guaranteed the remainder. Madison, his arm finally free from the sling, nodded with satisfaction. Our employees' security was never negotiable. Emma sat in a child-sized chair at the far end of the conference table, quietly working on homework while the adults conducted business. Her presence had become a regular feature of Madison's afternoon meetings, a reminder of what truly mattered. Amid corporate discussions, the new Employee Assistance Program is already showing remarkable results, Rose reported, consulting notes she'd written in her careful script. 3 families have received emergency housing assistance, and we've enrolled 12 children in our educational scholarship program. Robert Chen smiled. Rose, your background in caregiving has brought a perspective we never knew we were missing. Caring for people isn't complicated, Rose replied simply. You just have to remember that behind every employee ID number is a human being with hopes and fears and families to protect. Madison watched this exchange with deep pride. In the months since Victoria and Nathan's arrests, Cooper Industries had transformed from a profit-focused corporation into something unprecedented. A company that measured success by employee happiness as much as shareholder value. Daddy Madison, Emma interrupted politely. Mrs. Henderson called. She said to remind you about the school board meeting tonight. Thank you, sweetheart, Madison replied, making a note. Emma's academic excellence had earned her a spot on the Student Advisory Committee at Manhattan Prep Academy, where her insights on making school more welcoming to children from diverse backgrounds had impressed educators throughout the district. After the meeting concluded, Madison found himself alone with Sarah, who had stayed behind to review legal documents. You know, Sarah said with a small smile. 6 months ago, if someone had told me that Cooper Industries would be funding a homeless shelter and offering free childcare to all employees, I would have checked their mental health. Madison laughed, gathering Emma's school supplies. 6 months ago, I would have agreed with you. The board loves the new direction, Sarah continued. Productivity is up, turnover is down, and somehow we're more profitable than ever. Turns out that treating people with dignity is good for business, Madison observed. Who would have thought? Emma tugged at his sleeve. Can we stop for ice cream before the school meeting? Grandma Rose said she'd meet us there. Of course, Madison replied, then looked at Sarah. Want to join us? I promise Emma will share her sprinkles. As they left the building together, Madison reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. Victoria was serving a 15-year sentence for kidnapping and fraud. Nathan had received 8 years but was providing testimony against other corporate conspirators. Meanwhile, Cooper Industries had become a model for ethical business practices, with delegation requests from companies worldwide seeking to understand how profitability and compassion could coexist. That evening, as Madison tucked Emma into bed, she asked the question that had become their nightly ritual. Are you happy, Daddy Madison? Madison looked around the bedroom that was now truly Emma's home, walls covered with her artwork, shelves lined with books they read together, a desk where she practiced writing her name as Emma Cooper. Happier than I ever imagined possible, he replied honestly. 5 years later, the autumn sun painted Central Park in shades of gold and crimson as Madison Cooper knelt on one knee in front of the Alice in Wonderland statue, where he'd brought Emma to play countless Saturday mornings. At 12 years old, Emma had grown into a confident, compassionate young woman who still insisted on holding his hand during their weekend walks. Will you, Sarah Elizabeth Wilson, do me the honor of becoming my wife and Emma's stepmother? Madison asked, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the man who had transformed from a cold businessman into the most loving father and partner she could imagine. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, of course. Emma, who had been hiding behind the statue with Rose, burst into view with a whoop of joy. I knew she'd say yes. I helped pick the ring. Rose appeared beside her granddaughter, now officially Emma's adopted grandmother, beaming with pride. At 77, Rose had become the heart of not just their family, but of Cooper Industries' revolutionary employee wellness program, which had become a model studied by business schools worldwide. About time you made it official, Rose teased, embracing Sarah warmly. Emma's been planning your wedding for months. As they walked home through the park where their story had deepened, Madison reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. Cooper Industries now employed over 10,000 people and maintained its position as one of the most ethical and profitable companies in America. The Cooper Family Foundation, established with Emma's input and Rose's wisdom, had provided educational opportunities to over 500 children from underprivileged backgrounds. Daddy, Emma said, using the title that no longer needed the qualifier, Madison, when you and Sarah get married, will we have a really big family? We already have a really big family, Madison replied, gesturing toward the extended network of employees, scholarship recipients, and community members who had become part of their world. But yes, it's going to get even bigger. That evening, their penthouse buzzed with celebration as colleagues, friends, and extended family members gathered to toast the engagement. Sarah had insisted on a simple announcement party, but Emma had convinced the adults that simple could still include a chocolate fountain and a playlist of her favorite songs. Speech, called out Robert Chen, now Cooper Industries COO, raising his champagne glass. Madison looked around the room at faces that represented his true wealth. Sarah, radiant with happiness. Emma, dancing with 3 other scholarship recipients who had become like siblings to her. Rose, deep in conversation with employees who sought her counsel on everything from work conflicts to family problems. 5 years ago, Madison began, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. I thought success was measured by profit margins and market dominance. I was wrong. He found Emma in the crowd, her bright eyes focused on him with complete attention. A 7-year-old girl taught me that success is measured by how many people you help, how much love you share, and whether you leave the world better than you found it. And a remarkable woman named Rose, he continued, nodding toward his surrogate mother, showed me that family isn't always about blood, it's about choice, commitment, and unconditional love. Sarah moved to stand beside him, slipping her hand into his. Together, we've built something more valuable than any corporation, a community that proves business can be a force for good. As applause filled the room, Emma raised her own glass of sparkling cider. To Daddy Madison, who saved me and Grandma Rose, but really we saved him right back. Later that night, after the guests had departed and Emma was asleep, Madison stood in his home office looking at a photograph that had become his most treasured possession. It showed the four of them, Madison, Sarah, Emma, and Rose, at Emma's school graduation ceremony, where she had delivered a speech about how families come together in the most unexpected ways. Madison Cooper had started as a lonely billionaire who measured his worth by his net worth. He was ending as a man who understood that true wealth came from love, purpose, and the courage to open your heart to strangers who might become family. Outside his window, New York City sparkled with infinite possibilities, and Madison smiled, knowing that the greatest adventure of his life was just beginning.